everyday people and everyday stories. Ah, don't you just love subscriber stories? They have beautiful, beautiful, scary stories waiting for you right now.
This happened about 10 years ago, so I was about 6 or 7. About 2 weeks after my childhood best friend moved, another family moved into her house. It was a typical mom, dad, and son. To the left of that house was where my friend Abby lived. One day, when Abby and I were playing and hanging out, this kid just materializes out of nowhere, asking to hang out with us. He was really short, and his name was on the lines of Charlie or Charles. It may have been Chuck, but anyway, we said yes because we were friendly kids then. So he began to hang out with us every day, and pretty soon, apparently, we began to date. I don't even remember saying yes to him. I didn't even really know what it meant to date someone. One day, I went over to Abby's house. We were in the living room eating sweets and watching TV. The front door was open with the glass door closed. Abby looks up, and there stood that kid. When she looked up, so did I. Chuck was pressed against the glass with his hands cupped over his eyes to be able to see inside. For some reason or another, we didn't find this creepy at the time. I guess it was our childish brains. My friend Abby, wanting us to be cute, somehow forced me outside with him. It turns out he wanted a hug from me. I got the tightest vice grip around myself when he hugged me. It was like being crushed by a car. I laughed it off though. Fast forward to a few weeks later, his family is having a yard sale. I go over because it looked like he had some pretty cool stuff. While talking to him about buying a keyboard, he asked me if I wanted to see his bedroom. In my baby mind, since it was my previous friend's home, then I'd be safe. However, it was weird that he'd only ask me if I wanted to see his room, so I agreed. We went through the front door, which led to the living room. I glanced around to quickly see no TV in there. Where a TV would have been placed was a bull skull, with candles and books below on a black table. I looked at his parents and they wore all black. Each had one black book in their hand, and were reading. They didn't even look up or talk when I offered a hello. It was like they were deaf or something. Anyways, we got to Chuck's bedroom, which was my old friend's bedroom. It had a large sliding closet, and the room was fairly sized with a small window adjacent from the bed. The first thing he showed me was the closet. He opened it, and I remember kneeling down and looking at crayon writing on the wall. Writing not done by my previous friend. The writing was rough and in red and blue crayon. I saw my name written on the wall in big red letters. I heard the bedroom door click shut. I don't remember what happened after that, but the next thing I knew, I just shot up and bolted out of the house. I ran quickly back home and went inside. He began walking by my house every day, asking to play with me. I then remembered that each time I'd go to Abby's house, we began to stay inside and near the bedrooms instead of the front door and windows. We always kept the curtains closed, and my parents let me outside less and less the longer Chuck lived there. Luckily, he moved out after about 4 months. I'm 23 now, but when this happened, I was only 15. It was my first year of high school, and I was really excited. I was kind of shy then, and I had a close circle of friends, but that was it. I'm not one to brag, but I've been told underneath my 2 big glasses and bright pink braces that I was quite attractive. Of course I wasn't perfect. I had curves, and one might say my eyes were too far apart. My blonde hair had been dyed way too many times, so it looked dull, almost a gray color at my roots. A week after school started, my best friend Jocelyn and I were walking to our history class when we ran into Gabe. Gabe was a senior, the hottest senior in our high school. Gabe had shot us a flirty smile and said, "Hi." Jocelyn practically went weak in the knees and could barely talk. I, on the other hand, played it cool, even though inside I was screaming like some sort of fangirl. I said hi back, and we kind of just stood there awkwardly until Gabe said, "See you later," and jogged off. We went to class giggling. At the end of the day, I had decided to walk home. I only lived a couple of blocks away, and I wanted to start exercising more. I put my earbuds in and started my walk alone. I had maybe walked a yard or so, and I could feel eyes on me. You just know when someone's staring at you. I turned around briskly and didn't see anyone. I shrugged it off and continued my walking. I got the feeling a couple more times, but each time I turned around, I saw nothing. I was about to turn onto my street when I felt it again. I quickly turned around, and just as I did, a tall figure stepped off the sidewalk and hid behind a bush. The bush wasn't that big, and I can kinda see through it. A young guy crouched down low, barely moving. This creeped me out, and I turned around and sped off towards my house. When I reached my driveway, I looked back and saw none other than Gabe poking his head out from behind the corner. I ran inside and locked all the doors and windows. My mom was upstairs asleep since she had to work the night shift that night, and I remember running into her room and crawling into bed with her. She didn't wake up, so I couldn't tell her, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have anyway. There had to be a logical explanation for Gabe's behavior. Maybe he lived nearby or something, I didn't know. After a long day of school, I just curled up beside my mom and fell asleep. I woke up and my mom was gone. It had to be at least 9, and with a quick look at the clock on the bedside table, I was correct. I had slept soundly and I had forgotten about Gabe and my walk home. I laid in my mom's bed watching TV for about an hour. I got hungry since I hadn't eaten since lunch, and went downstairs to see what there was to eat. I found a leftover turkey sub and sat down on the couch in front of the TV to eat. I finished it and took my plate into the kitchen. As I was passing the door, I heard a loud knock and nearly dropped the plate. I crept over to the door and looked through the peephole. My heart dropped when I saw Gabe. It was 10 o'clock on a school night, and here he was on my doorstep. My fears from earlier rushed back to me, and I started to shake violently.
"Hannah, I know you're in there alone. Open up,"
he yelled through the door. I wanted to cry. He started banging on the door again, harder this time. I sat the plate down on the floor and tiptoed up the stairs into my room. I grabbed my pepper spray from my book bag my mom made me bring along with me everywhere I went. I was making my way down the stairs again when he started to jiggle the doorknob trying to get in.
"Fine, Hannah, be that way,"
he shouted. A few minutes later, I heard a car door open and close. I waited for the sound of the motor, but it never came. Seconds later, he was back at the door, jiggling the doorknob again.
"I have tools, Hannah. You can't hide. We will be together,"
he screamed in a high-pitched voice that didn't fit his jockey look. "Go away or I'm calling the cops," I screamed. I was scared and annoyed that this guy I had literally said one word to was trying to break into my house. I sprinted the rest of the way downstairs and ran into the living room to grab the landline. I dialed 911 when I looked up and saw Gabe's face, pushed up against my window, staring right at me. I screamed and ran back upstairs into my mother's room. I locked the door and sat on the bed and typed in the final one. My hands were shaking as I did this. The operator asked me what was going on, and I explained everything, from earlier after school until his face in my window. He told me to hang tight and stay on the line until the police arrived. I heard a car motor start and peel out of my driveway. I relaxed a little knowing Gabe had fled. When the cops arrived a good 10 minutes later, they searched the area and went to his house. I was told they found him in his room playing video games as if nothing happened. They searched his car and found screwdrivers, duct tape, and condoms inside. When asked about them later in custody, he confessed on his plans to assault me in my house. In the end, I think he only got about 3 months in jail and a couple of months of probation. My mom and I moved to another city right after that incident. Today I'm still scared of what could have happened that night, and that Gabe is still out there. I just hope he doesn't try to do anything on anyone else. Okay, so just to begin with, I'm not religious. I'm not a believer in ghosts, spirits, or the afterlife. In fact, I always look for a rational and scientific explanation for anything strange that happens. And I have to say that very few strange things have ever happened to me, and I suppose that this is why. Even though this experience I'm about to share with you may seem silly or tame, it was frightening to me because I could find no rational explanation for it. So here goes. It happened 14 years ago when I was 22 years old. Although 14 years have passed, I remember it so clearly because, like I mentioned, nothing strange really happens to me. I was living by myself in an old 3-story house that had been converted into 3 apartments. The location was Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, England. Being new in the apartment, I hadn't yet had friends or family visit the place. One night that winter, I went to bed and decided to close my door to keep the warmth in, and went to sleep. The next morning, I think about 7 or 8 a.m., I was waking up when I suddenly heard 3 very loud knocks on my bedroom door, so loud I thought I heard the door frame rattle. Needless to say, I awoke instantly. I sat up and knew that nobody else had keys to my apartment, so I was confused and unsettled. I sat there silently for a few seconds, listening, but heard no sound at all from the other side of the door. I let out a confused "hello?" without expecting a response, and as expected, no response came. I slowly got up, switched on the light, and opened my bedroom door to see nobody. I searched the apartment and found nothing unusual. I checked my main door and found it still to be locked with the chain attached. I made a particular note of the chain being attached on the inside because if for any reason there was anyone else who had a key, they wouldn't have been able to get in as it was winter and all the windows were closed and still locked. I wasn't scared, just confused, and came to the only conclusion possible, that it was my imagination. After all, I was only half awake when I thought I heard the knocks. I was going to forget the whole thing until I decided to do one last thing to test whether it was my imagination or not. And I wish I hadn't, because I could have lived happily knowing it was my imagination. Now, as I mentioned earlier, being new in the apartment meant that I hadn't yet had anyone else stay over or visit. So the thought occurred to me that I had never, nor has anyone else, actually knocked on my bedroom door, so I had no idea what that actually sounds like. Now, I understand how silly this may sound because a knock is a knock, right? They all sound the same, right? Well, not really, because depending on the size, weight, type of wood, thickness, and whether they are insulated or hollow makes a difference to the sound of the knock. Maybe only subtly, but still a noticeable difference. So I closed my bedroom door with me on the outside, and I gave the door 3 very hard knocks with the force I perceived was used when I first heard them. That was it. The hair stood up on my arms and neck, and at that moment I was scared. That was exactly what I heard. Not similar, exactly. The doorframe even rattled exactly the same way. I didn't do this to test if my door had been knocked on. I did it to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it, but now I had no doubt at all that I hadn't imagined it, as I had no way of knowing what a hard knocking on this door sounded like. I went around the apartment knocking the same on all the other doors, and they all sounded slightly different. I went back to my bedroom door and did the test again, and once again, a chill of fear swept through me. That was exactly what I heard. My bedroom door was knocked on that morning, but I just don't know how, or by who, or by what. I stayed in that flat for 4 years and never experienced anything else odd or unusual. When I was 17, I received a Facebook friend request by Tyler. He looked like a nice guy, played video games like Halo as much as me. A couple of weeks later, we went on a date. My first mistake was trusting one profile picture. He lived less than a block away with his grandparents. When he came to pick me up from my new house, he commented on it by saying, "Hey, my friend used to live here. We smoked a lot of shit in that bedroom," pointing to the big window in front of the house. That was my room. I laughed it off thinking maybe it was a joke. It wasn't. The date was weird. We ate at a Mexican restaurant in Bricktown. I felt as if he was either really high or that was his personality, which I played off as well. When we were walking to the movie theater, he was walking behind me. I heard a phone camera keep going off. He was taking pictures of my backside. I didn't know at the time, so I kept walking. We went to the movies, however, the whole time I didn't feel right. Anyways, fast forward 1 month, I made the big mistake that I decided to date him. We didn't really hang out at all, we just went on dates, and he would blow my phone up all the time. When we started hanging out, that's when the abuse started. He complained about my height, my weight, my everything. He hated my dog, my mom, my sisters, and anyone around me. I got rid of anyone I could besides my family or dog, those I cannot live without. I stayed away from them as much as I could so he wouldn't be mad at me. If he got mad at me, he would threaten to kill himself or me or anything I loved. 3 months in and I've gained weight and wore heels all the time, making myself in his image. I found out he was still using drugs after multiple fights of him telling me he's clean. Bullshit. I stayed for 8 months. My family didn't know I was abused and humiliated. When I didn't do what he asked, he would get so mad at me. Once he pulled down my skirt to reveal my underwear, telling me how disgusting it looked. Then he proceeded to push me into the closet room and rape me. I wish I could say it stopped there. I wish I would have left and never saw him again. I wished I was dead. I changed a lot for him. My attitude, my clothes, my hair, anything and everything I could to make him be pleased with me. I wasn't pleased. I hated myself so much. I started taking a handful of diet pills and only drinking coffee. Only when my family was around, I ate. He asked me to use my bank account to pay his bank account, which was overdrawn $1,000, so I gave him my account information. I was so stupid. By the next month, my account was overdrawn $1,200 as well. At the time, I didn't have a job, so I sold everything I could so my mom wouldn't be mad at me. He told me he would buy me an Xbox One, which at the time was just on the market. That never happened either. He of course bought himself one. After a couple of months when he got bored of it, I could play on it, only when he didn't want to. I could be in the middle of an online match and he would kick me off or tell me what a stupid slut and loser I was. He would blame his drug addiction on me because I didn't stop him. I know you're asking why I didn't call the cops on him. His uncle was part of the sheriff's department. It kept getting worse and worse. I was truly an absolute idiot. He bought a bow and some arrows to shoot at my dog while he was high on cough syrup. He made me buy cough syrup from his friend who worked at the local CVS in exchange for booze and money. Sometimes his friend would ask to see naked pictures of me. He started watching brutal bestiality porn around me, saying he wished that would be him fucking the animals. One day, when he was passed out, I got on his computer and to my surprise I found a file named Her, with every picture I sent him, every Facebook update, every Instagram post, pictures taken of me when I was home alone or in public, and one with my family which he said he was at a party at the time. I went to wake him up, asking him what the hell was on his computer. Then a message went off on his phone from his friend saying, "Hey, you bringing her to the party tonight? I have the stuff. what stuff, I thought. Was it booze? Was it a date rape drug? Was it a fucking dead carcass of a dog or some shit? Like, what the fuck? So I confronted him about it, and he acted like it was nothing, just like the disgusting animal porn. This boy pointed a knife at me and said, "We are going to the party." I slapped the ever-loving shit out of him, and he started crying and begging. Although I was curious of what the stuff was, I went home. He came over the next night and professed his love for me and that he would quit. Right. I wish I would have slammed the door, but I didn't. I took him back. And then shit went to hell in a handbasket. On my birthday, he was supposed to meet me at a hookah bar because that's what I wanted to do. He instead went to another friend's house and cheated on me with 2 other girls. I went there in a fit of rage and banged on the door until his friend answered. When he came outside and told me what he did while laughing, I broke his nose and slammed him against my car. "Who's stronger now?" I said. The friend threatened to call the cops. At that point, I didn't care. I felt like a weight was lifted off of me. After we broke up, he kept calling and I kept blocking. On Facebook, on every social media site. He even went as far as carving my name in his arm. By now, me being 20, I have blocked over 58 numbers, all of which are him. He still shows up time to time when he's bored with another girl at my job and at my mother's house. I have since moved out and I am now with my new boyfriend Sam. He has really helped me get over Tyler, and I will live happily ever after. This happened about 2 months ago. I was on Craigslist looking for a babysitting job, and I found this ad saying that the lady is looking for a babysitter of 2 kids, and to call her to discuss the rate of pay. She only lived 30 minutes away. Let's call her Lauren. Lauren tells me she is a nurse and her husband is in the military. She needs me, or anyone interested, to come in at 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. to help dress her children, make them breakfast, and to just help clean up the mess. They were around 5 or 7. After that I could go take a nap or whatever I wanted. The pay rate was much too high for what I would be doing. I wasn't even staying a long time at her place. I must add, Lauren had a very cheerful and happy tone when I called. I wouldn't even be babysitting, she said. I don't drive, so I told her I would have to ask my husband if he would be willing to take me, but I was interested. Her tone changed to kinda angry and awkward. She says, "Oh, okay." We exchanged our goodbyes there. I called my husband. He's delighted to take me, and I try and call Lauren. No answer. For a week I tried to contact her. No answer. If this lady was in need of a babysitter so bad, why wouldn't she contact me back? And why on earth was she so angry that my husband would be driving? Most military families live on post. Why on earth pay someone so much when they will be doing so little for only 3 days a week? And shouldn't 5 and 7-year-olds know how to put on shirts and pants at least? None of these red flags got to me till now, 2 months later. I know this lady was planning something horrible. I mean, she got so angry when I spoke of him driving me there and back. Please be careful on Craigslist and don't be naive. I feel lucky she backed out. I was 12 when this happened. A few years ago, my cousin and I were having our usual weekly sleepover on the weekend, ready for video games, Mountain Dew, and Doritos. Our mothers worked a lot, but managed to schedule their weekends off together and go out to party. They partied pretty late into the night. Leaving 2 boys alone together didn't seem like a big deal. We were good kids, never did anything we weren't supposed to do. Just a couple of nerds who liked to play Xbox and be at home. This was a Friday night, and I remember because I was finishing my homework before our fun weekend. Right as my cousin and aunt arrived around 7 p.m., my cousin dashed into my room and shut the door, leaning in to tell me in a hushed voice about how crazy the past few hours have been. Oh my god, dude, Dakota. My mom was saying Psycho Jimmy was calling your mom again. He left notes all over your windows and shit. Did you see them when you got home? Now, let me explain a little bit about Psycho Jimmy before I go on. My mom dated this guy on and off for 4 years. She had recently ended things for good. He was incredibly smart, insanely handsome, and a legit sociopath. For the most part, when he and my mom dated, he just acted like a clever robot. Whenever my mother would break it off with him, he stalked us, both of us. When I got off the bus after school, even sometimes the dude was just standing there waiting for me and walked me back to my house. He left me presents a lot, like new video games on the doorstep or Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I thought he was just trying to get my mom's attention through me. He would go to my mom's work and stare at her or make strange phone calls saying, "The man of your dreams is just around the corner," or "You look lovely in that red blouse." It wasn't threatening, just creepy. Anyway, back to the story. I shook my head. My mom usually tried to keep me out of the loop, especially when it came to Psycho Jimmy. "Nah, man, I didn't see anything," I said back to him. He seemed excited. Psycho Jimmy incidents were hilarious to him, and me too, really. I thought he was harmless. "He left notes everywhere and called your mom all day, just like last week. He said that he saw you wearing that coat he got you for Christmas." I laughed and said, "Oh yeah, they broke up right after Christmas, so I guess I'm allowed to keep the coat," I joked. He had seen me in it while walking me home from the bus stop a few days prior, so I honestly wasn't that creeped out. Our mothers went out a while after that. My mom needed to dance her troubles away with her best friend Vodka. My aunt always tagged along, even though she didn't drink much. They were set on finding my mom a new boyfriend. Whatever, I thought. My cousin and I didn't even look up as they said goodbye and left. Call of Duty was too important. He called at 9 on the dot. I reached for the phone and quickly put it between my cheek and shoulder so I could keep playing. It said call restricted on my cell, but I picked up the call anyway. "Sup," I muttered with my eyes focused on the TV. "Good evening, Dakota." I smirked to myself and looked at my cousin and mouthed, "Psycho Jimmy." He in turn backed out of our session and turned to me with an excited grin. "Sup, man, how you been? Mom isn't here right now," I said. "I know she isn't," he said in sort of a laugh. I frowned a little and tapped the controller. "Do you want me to tell her that you called, or what?" There was a bit of a pause, and by now my cousin had started begging me to silently put Psycho Jimmy on speaker. I rolled my eyes and did so. "Where is she?" he asked kindly. I blinked and tried to think of something clever, but all that came out was, I think she went to CVS to, grab milk." My cousin was covering his mouth and laughing at my sputtered response. Jimmy gave a sigh. "Ah, just milk," and I could tell in the sound of his voice that he knew I was full of shit. "I'll call back in 15 then." And I could practically hear him grinning against his phone before he hung up. My cousin frowned and said he couldn't wait for him to call back. I rolled my eyes and suggested we check to make sure the doors and windows were locked, just in case. He agreed and we did so. Everything was locked up tight and we returned to our spot in front of the TV in the living room. True to his words, Jimmy called back 15 minutes later. My cousin smiled like a madman. I put Jimmy on speaker and greeted him the same as before. "Sup? Is your mother home yet?" "Nah, man, she must have had to get a few things." We heard him sigh. "She went out looking like a streetwalker with her sister." His voice got a bit darker. "You sure she went out for dairy?" His voice was totally condescending. I scowled at the phone. "You see her leave the house or something?" I said, now pissed that he insulted my mother. But my eyes got a little wider when he very chipperly said, "Yes." My cousin looked pale. "And that was over an hour ago, Dakota. You'd think she would be home by now. Shooting people must make you thirsty," he said, honestly sounding like he expected me to laugh along with him. I felt sick. He could see us. I don't know why now at this very instance of his creepy stalking is what scared me. I guess because it was night and dark and my mother was gone. It all felt too real this time. I looked from my cousin back to my phone repeatedly before I hung up and tried to think of what to do. "Call your mom," I told him as I got up and started turning the lights out and looking outside. I ran around shutting the blinds and curtains in every room of our one-story small house before meeting my cousin back in the living room while he talked to his mother. He was whispering, "Jimmy is outside," over and over. I could hear the loud music blaring as he tried convincing her he wasn't pulling a prank, that they needed to come home. I don't remember how they ended the conversation because my cell rang again, restricted again. I was somewhere between angry and pissed when I stupidly answered the call. "Dude, what do you want? You two broke up. You don't own my mom. Fuck off," or something to that effect. I tried to sound tough, but being 12 with a squeak voice, I probably sounded pathetic. He started mumbling in a low mockery of a caring father kind of voice. Things like, "Dakota, you're such a sweet, innocent boy. Nothing like your mother. Tell me the truth. Tell me what she did behind my back. Tell me the truth and I'll be able to move on. Come to the door and let's talk. Who's Clark? Has she introduced him to you yet? Don't you dare think of replacing me." He was babbling and stammering, not at all like the smooth and confident sounding Jimmy I was used to hearing. Now he sounded desperate and winded. I tried keeping him on the phone and lied through my teeth about my mom and made up crazy things like, "You two aren't meant to be," and stupid shit like that. It's all I could think to do in my 12-year-old mind. I thought if I could make him happy, he wouldn't hurt me or think of breaking the door down, but all he did was beg for me to talk to my mother or let him inside, which I of course refused. He ended up hanging up after making this weird, sad moaning sound. I guess while I was on the phone with Jimmy, my cousin had got off the phone with his mom and called the cops, which was awesome, and I'm thankful he had the brains to do that while I was dumbfounded. He didn't know if our mothers were coming back, and he was scared stupid. After he called, my cousin hid in the pantry of the kitchen where there's a little latch door. I watched out the kitchen window until I saw red and blue flashing lights and yelled to my cousin, "Police are here." They actually got there only a few minutes after Jimmy hung up on me. They weren't coming in right away. I couldn't see what was happening down the driveway, so I ran into the guest bedroom so I could see the driveway and the front of the house. I saw one cop standing at the side of the cop car and one at the top of our driveway. The rest of the night is kind of a blur. I talked to the cops and showed them my phone and told them the history he had with my mother. At some point, our mothers finally showed up, and they were both scolded for leaving young kids home alone with no sitter. I was surprised they didn't get in more trouble about it, but I guess it's not illegal. The next part is what really fucked me up. I feel sick just typing this. I guess while I was talking to Psycho Jimmy, he was standing outside our house, jerking off. They found his mess on the outside panels of the house, and his dick was still out when the cops pulled up and told him to put his hands up. That explains the weird moan before he hung up on me. This sick son of a bitch was getting off, and I thought he was just upset about my mom, but he kept me on the phone to hear my voice. We found out Psycho Jimmy is a convicted pedophile in the state of Ohio. I got so pissed off and sick thinking about how all this time his focus and his stalking towards me was sexually fueled. I would have never guessed it either. Not once did I get that rapey or pedo vibe from him. No one did. But I remember seemingly innocent things like hugs goodbye or him doubting me with presents all the time. Then the weird shit like him walking me home from the bus stop, and now everything is tainted with this sick feeling. I threw away everything he gave me too, even the video games. My mom puked when the cops told her. We got a restraining order. My mom won't even say his name, and I never found out what became of Psycho Jimmy or his sentence. I know he served time, but nothing extensive. We also moved to Indiana a few months ago. I hope that he never comes looking for us. Hello, my Nightmare Army. Thank you all for watching my video. And thank you, all my subscribers, for submitting their stories and letting me share them. I know it must have been hard to write down some of those and relive some of those past experiences. I'm sorry for that, but thank you guys again. You guys were such a big help to the video. And thank you as well, Brienne, for that creepy intro and your story. Very much loved both. Thank you. And if you guys did submit a story and I didn't narrate it, do not worry, I will narrate it in a future video. I could promise you guys that much. And a couple of channel updates that I want to discuss here. I've only been uploading once a week, and I do apologize for that. You know, it's just who I am. I like, going over my videos more than once. I like making my videos perfect for you guys. So it's just who I am, really. I'm all about quality over quantity. You know, if I just rush out and pump out as many videos as I can, they're not going to look as good. But with a couple of new subscribers and me going on 1,700 subscribers now, you guys are awesome, by the way. Thank you for subscribing. I want to step up my game a little bit and maybe try and do 2 videos a week or maybe 3 videos a week. I want to try and do that, we'll see how that goes. Maybe I can do it. I think I can, especially for you guys. So guys, like and subscribe, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.